Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix, and I set my critical eye today on This Is the Police. The game comes out on Steam on July 28th, 2016 for $14.99. It puts you in charge of a police station for 180 days as the police chief who's on his way out. You'll have to deal with your typical police tropes here: bad cops, corruption, and of course the mafia. But here's the question. Will the gameplay shine like the typical good guy cop, being a shining example for the strategy game community? Or is it corrupt at its core, unable to deliver a reasonable service to the citizens that have bought it? That's what I'm here to find out, but before I begin, this key was obtained from evolve.pr for the purposes of review. That won't change my opinion of the game in the end, but you should know that because of FTC guidelines, as well as the whole morals thing, you know? The best way to show off the gameplay here is running through a day of the life of our police chief, Jack Boyd. He's sort of stuck in this bad place. He's been an honest and good cop all of his life, but a series of unfortunate events have forced him into a very bad position. But nevertheless, he's still in charge, so let's see what happens today. Now, 2 seconds in, and I already have to deal with a request for a day off. And no, I'm not giving you a day off because the toilets are dirty. Scrub them yourself. The game's resource system is your cops. You have 2 shifts that you oversee, and you'll need those cops in order to respond to the various calls within the city. Now, your cops do have a morale system of sorts, so I've got to be willing to let a cop have a day off now and again, but I know this day is going to suck in particular, so I wasn't really willing to grant a lot of requests to begin with. Oh, and how I knew that? More on that later. And I'm already paying for a past decision. City Hall controls your budget, and if they don't like how you're doing things, they will cut that budget. That means less cops for you and less things that you can react to within the world. So obviously you need to listen to them, but some of the requests they make, yeah, they're a bit brutal. Here, the black population is protesting in front of City Hall, and this is one of the events that can happen during the day. Unlike the other events, however, you have to respond to these basically, so I'll have to allocate the appropriate cops and resources to deal with the protest. City Hall doesn't want this protest to happen, so if I want to be on their good side, I've got to make sure that there's no big scene made. Now, the cops that you choose are all based on their reputation, as you see by the star values under each cop's name. The bigger the reputation, the easier they can deal with the situations in question. The main mechanic that the game relies on is delicately balancing all the different factions within this world. I'm still wanting to deal with the crime in the city, but I've got to be careful about pissing off the aforementioned City Hall, in addition to getting in trouble with the legal system. That latter one may be because I suggest that force is used to deal with the protest in question. Most major decisions have consequences in one way or another, and what I have to do is make sure that one faction doesn't get so pissed off that I can't continue doing my job. So calls will come in, and I have to determine which officers to send depending on the severity of the call. A domestic problem, for example, depending on its event text, may not need the best and brightest cops I have. Hell, in some situations, the call actually ends up being a false alarm. But it's up to me to determine how much reputation I need on the scene, because that seemingly is the biggest factor in order to successfully deal with the crimes in question. Now, I could always send the best and brightest I have, but then a bigger crime could pop up that I need a specific officer for. So right now, I've got pretty much all but 3 resources allocated to current crimes right now, which is going to be a problem when this event happens, a mass riot. Look at how many cops that I can send. I can send SWAT and I can send the paddy wagon, but I've only got 3. How am I going to deal with this situation? And hell, let's add on top of that. Remember the domestic violence situation that I was dealing with before? Well, they need backup, and now I gotta consider, do I send more people, or do I hope that the 2 officers on scene can handle it? Or do I have them retreat? There's a lot of decision making in this game, and you'd think that would be a great thing for a strategy game. But that's the problem at the core of This Is the Police. Strategy games like this have a fundamental cornerstone in terms of gameplay: control. A strategy gamer wants some chaos and some randomness to the gameplay, no doubt, but they want to know that their actions are directly causing their success or failure depending on their choices. They want enough information in order to improve their chances of success, while understanding why a decision they made ended up being wrong in the long run. And that's where This Is the Police falls apart. First, I'm able to successfully deal with the domestic problem, sure, but I also don't know exactly why that was. I don't know if I overallocated my resources there on success, and when failure does happen, I still don't know how far I'm off and what I could have done to prevent that. This could have been done in several ways, whether it be talking to your officers and them giving you some feedback after they get back to headquarters. For example, you could have had an officer indicate that he was just standing around at the scene, giving me a hint that I over-budgeted. Instead, what this game ends up turning into is a lot of throwing shit against the wall and hoping it works. Now, one can argue this adds to the difficulty of the game and makes it more realistic. In real life, there isn't necessarily a formula that guarantees success. Shit does hit the fan regardless of planning, and this forces you to make tough decisions. And I'll give This Is the Police credit. It seemingly makes every decision you make a meaningful one. Even the smallest of crimes can turn into a problem because a bigger and more substantial issue pops up. But notice how I use the word seemingly there. The second biggest problem here is that the game puts you into situations that are so far out of your control that you don't know why you're bothering in the first place. Okay, so early on in the game, there was a feminist protest. Because I was already in City Hall's doghouse, I ended up using force during that protest despite the fact I didn't want to try to get on their good side. But seemingly because of it, later on, City Hall indicated that due to the pressures of that group, that I had to have 50% or more of my police force to be women. Okay, a hurdle to get over, fine. This causes problems as I can't just fire people without reason, or they can go after me legally in this game. This would seemingly be one of these hard decisions that I have to make. If I could make that decision. And here's the thing, I couldn't. See, there weren't female officers available for me to actually hire at that point. The only way I could actually pass that check was to fire over 60% of my current force, leaving me with 6 officers in total, 3 women and 3 men. And considering the rate in which crimes happen in this game, the city would burn to the ground if I wasn't knocked off by the mafia before then. This was literally a no-win situation, and when your gameplay is so reliant on control of your own destiny, it fails to keep me interested in continuing to play. I think the big issue here was the developers' vision to keep with a social commentary here. Now, if you check their Kickstarter and their recent interviews, they indicate that This Is the Police is not a political game, but a human one. It's seen with the issues brought up regarding racism and sexism within the game's environment, and to be honest, if that's what they wanted to do, then okay, fine. Not every game needs this message, but if that's the message they wanted to send, go right ahead. But they chose to use a gameplay genre and mechanics that really fought tooth and nail with that. A morale system, more details regarding the political elements and pressures within the game. There were several ways they could have enhanced that message while tying it to gameplay. Instead, the message and gameplay are so at odds with each other that you wonder if the story portion of the team was actually talking to the gameplay developers. What's even worse is the fact that the social message they were trying to get across fails miserably. That's because when several of these issues that are presented come up, they are rarely ever followed up on. So many subplots and elements of this game fall to the wayside, making you wonder why exactly they were even brought up in the first place. You're the ones who brought up these complicated issues, developers, and to just bring them up without really any kind of purpose behind them, it makes me wonder if you only brought them in to lure a specific audience to look at the game due to recent controversies. Look, I don't like saying that, I really don't. But for a game that is supposed to be about humans, you really don't discuss human nature whatsoever. It's not thought-provoking, it's just there. Even when the main plot regarding Jack does come back to an issue in the past, it's not done with a surgeon's precision, it's not even done with a sledgehammer. It's done with a resounding meh, which is a shame, because the best part of This Is the Police is its presentation. Everything is clean and nice to look at, having a simplicity to it, and yet making the actions within the cutscenes or within the visuals speak for themselves. The UI is so clear and so crisp, drawing attention to everything you need without squinting your eyes. The music does a great job of setting the mood that you want, and the ambiance noise of the city in the background really makes you feel like you're stuck in a 60s police station. It's a shame that everything around that presentation is so rocky, because it's one of the best in the genre when it comes to presentation elements. Now, you're probably wondering why I seemingly did okay on that early portion of the video with the riots and all, when the difficulty of the game is so high. Well, here's the critical dagger within the chest of this game. The game's replayability is virtually nothing. That's because the major events that occur throughout the day are always the same within that day. There is a path to perfection here, as the in-game events can be played out the same way in repeated attempts with the same result. The best strategy to beat This Is the Police is to play This Is the Police all the way through, write down everything that happened, and make sure you avoid the big problems you had. To replay the days where something goes wrong, and just avoid the bad decision the next time around. Find what the perfect decision is. If you know what's coming, then This Is the Police becomes rather easy, even when the game has little randomization elements for which cops get food poisoning, for example. Which turns the game into a game that you're just along for the ride, hitting specific inputs to deal with already known problems. Hell, even if you don't have the foresight thanks to playing specific parts of the game still turns into a game that you're just there to be there. The game gets into a rhythm that's so boring and lacks any good variety due to its problems that it almost puts you to sleep, and truth be told, I fell asleep while playing it. Sure, you can have literally everything on fire thanks to a bad decision you made, but even then, you end up just going through some motions to finish off an unsuccessful run. Because, well, you don't really have the tools to recover from it. In case you haven't realized it by now, I can't recommend This Is the Police to 99.9% of the gaming population. In fact, I'm trying to think of an audience for the game, but every audience I think of will have a major problem with the game. Strategy gamers will be frustrated with the lack of feedback and control. Roguelike and roguelite lovers, despite the game not being of those genres, will hate how rigid the game's structure is. Hell, even people looking for a social commentary regarding the state of the police will hate this game because it never really discusses it in any detail. The presentation is its saving grace, but presentation can only enhance the material that it's presenting. And because this material has so many problems, I can't recommend the game to anyone. Unfortunately, it looks like This Is the Police needs to hang up its badge for good. Thanks for watching. Like the video, share it with a friend, and subscribe if you want more content like this. In the description below, you'll find the Steam review accompanying this vid, along with social media that you can follow me on, Twitter, Google+, and Facebook groups. And if you want to support the channel, click that Patreon on the left of the screen. And remember, keep on gaming.